335, Production Operations Management. I know that when I was in class, I kind of missed, when I did online classes, I'm sorry, I kind of missed some of the interaction with the professor, especially as the class started off. So I thought I'd go through this to try to alleviate some of that issue and make sure that you're aware of expectations and have an opportunity to have somebody walk you through some of the key documents for the class. So I thought I'd take a couple moments to do that for you, send out a link so that anyone who wants to can view it. So we'll start off just going through the class in the Blackboard shell. Announcements should be very familiar for you folks. Obviously this wouldn't be the first class for anyone, although the structure is going to be the same as any Blackboard class that you take for the most part. So there's the first initial announcement I posted a while ago. Let's go through the syllabus, as the syllabus is a great way to touch on all the aspects for the course. So opening the syllabus. Go ahead and zoom in a little bit. Oh, maybe not that much. There's all my contact information. I take phone calls a lot over the weekend. I also try to make sure I have an office hour or two now and again throughout the week. Feel free to just give me a heads up if you want to talk something over. You can send an email and then we'll walk through something. The regular Peru formatted email address I check several times a day. So you can certainly send me an email at any time, and I usually respond within a handful of hours. Textbook is required for this operations management with the Connect package, as a lot of our work will be done through Connect, the 12th edition. There's your ISBNs to make sure that you pick the right one. Software, there's not a lot, just Word and Excel is fine. There's the link to our Connect class. For those who are not familiar, McGraw-Hill has some of their materials through a web portal that you can use, and we're going to integrate that into this class for some of the stuff we work on. Prereqs, if you're in the class, you probably already took them, so you're aware of what they are. Class is going to go over some of the topics listed out here. We're looking at a lot of operations strategy, keeping in mind operations is the generation of the product. So if you're looking at like a company like Toyota that's actually building the car, that's the operations. And for that, we'll look at a lot of different process management concepts like just-in-time production systems, and we'll look at choosing facility locations, supply chain management, everything that you're reading there. We're gonna at least touch on. Scrolling further down, let's look at the assignments that we're going to be working with. Some of the assignments are reading assignments that you'll have to read before you want to take some of the quizzes, discussion boards, etc. Connect, we have a couple of assignments that are through Connect. Just the math questions are through Connect. Every week there's a couple of questions. Some weeks it's just one, but there's usually a math function associated with every chapter. Discussion board you should all be familiar with. I presume that everyone's had an online class with the discussion board. 16 weeks that there's going to be posts. Each one of the posts is worth 10 points. I originally formatted the discussion board essentially saying the same thing for each one. What's your favorite part of the chapter? Or do a little research on something you like in the chapter. They may get changed as the weeks progress if something comes up. So just be sure to take a look at the discussion board. I won't change it obviously if you've already started to post, or I won't change if it's within a week or so. But if something comes up applicable to us, I may change it. You want to make sure you post a discussion board, your initial post sometime early in the week if possible, so that you can do your replies and feedback throughout the rest of the week. You'll need to have that initial post and then some feedback to your peers. Quizzes is the biggest part of our class. There's 19 chapters. Each chapter has a short quiz. The quiz is open book. I'm not going to try to tell you you can't use your text or research or whatever. As a matter of fact, I make the test so that you have 60 minutes for the 15 questions. So you should have plenty of time to do any research that you need real time during the quiz. So there should be plenty of time to look every question up. 2 very short papers on applicable topics for us. One on Six Sigma and one on PMI, Project Management Institute. Those are assigned during the weeks where the class text touches on them. They're just short papers, 3 or 4 pages. Quantitative problems. This is the math part that I talked about. Every week, with the exception of chapter 1, there's a very short math section. There's a quiz linked in the assignments that you have to go through Connect. You're literally only answering 1 or 2 questions, and I just want to make sure you understand the math associated with the chapter. So I set the Connect quiz so that you can have as many submissions as you want. You can just keep trying until you get it. Hints are allowed, etc. So I just need to see that you took the time to look at the math question and you kind of understand it. That will be the total part of the math. It's an easy way to get those 90 points, because as long as you see the right, I mean, you can keep submitting it. So if you get the wrong answer, you can just submit again. So you should be able to easily get those points and just learn the 1 or 2 math functions that are applicable for the class. There will be a cumulative final exam. The final exam I have as 100 points, but there's a practice test so that you understand the format and what things are done, and that'll be 30 of the 100 points. And that will help with preparedness, as well as making sure that you get a lot of the points, because that practice test you can submit multiple times. And then there's a cumulative final that is 70 points. 70 questions, a point apiece. It's over the course of the whole. I mean, it'll cover questions from throughout the whole class. If you open up this Excel document, for those who are very structured, it will lay out those points in a format that's pretty structured. Here's the points breakdown for how you'd get an A, B, C, etc. Late assignments. Normally we don't do late assignments, but I'm a very understanding person, and I know a lot of us are working professionals, and sometimes some things happen. Just try to get a hold of me in advance if you have to submit something late. Try to get a hold of me as quickly as possible so I understand. And then this is the standard language that you've seen in all approved state syllabuses, syllabi, the incomplete coursework, the academic integrity. You can cite your source and use outside sources, but don't try to plagiarize. And we do use software that does originality check to make sure that it's not borrowed language, that you're not citing out. And then I went ahead and included the schedule, each week what we're going to do. And you'll see some repetitive structure start to break out. Most weeks is just 1 chapter. Week 1 is a very normal example. It's 1 chapter. You do you read through the material that's in Blackboard, take a short quiz. You can have your material open, you can have your book ready in front of you, etc. Short quiz, discussion board post. That's very common. Most weeks are like that. Week 2, very same thing, except for you do your math questions. Within Connect, there's a link, and that'll flow through to the gradebook. The points on that are just 5 points, and it's somewhere between 1 and 3 questions. Some of them are just 1 question, some of them there's a couple. I try to make sure there was just 1 question on each of the math functions associated with that chapter, just so that, like I said, so you can show that so I can see that you understand the math concept associated with that chapter. Week 3 is the same thing as week 2, except for we're going to chapter 3. Week 4 is a little bit rough because it is 2 chapters. There's a couple weeks where there's 2 chapters, but it's the same concept where it's a short quiz, couple of math questions, between 1 and 5 math questions. Week 5 goes back to just 1 chapter. Week 6, 1 chapter. Same things. Week 8, 1 chapter. Week 9, you get an assignment for that 6 Sigma paper we talked about earlier. Same questions, and that's not due until 10/25. So we review the material during week 8, and then you have week 9 where it's off for fall break. We're closed that week. There won't be anything new assigned, but you'll have that full week then, of course, to work on it. And the paper's not due until the end of fall break on 10/25. So you'll get assigned on 10/12, and essentially 2 weeks. Notable though, you can do that anytime you want. If you want to do that ahead of time, you can. And if you open up the paper, it gives a description of what we're going to be doing There's no new assignments during week 9. Week 10, back to the same format, 1 chapter, short quiz, a couple math questions, and your discussion board post. Week 11, same thing, 1 chapter, discussion board post, a couple math questions. Week 12, chapter 13, same thing. And then this one, here's your other week where there's 2 chapters. So week 13 will be kind of tough. So there's 2 chapters. It's the same format, but it's twice. That's just so that we can get through each chapter. Week 14 gets you back to normal, except the PMI paper is assigned at that time. It's I want you to be cognizant of what this organization is and what they do. The paper goes into more detail there. Chapter 17 on week 15 is when that paper is due, 12/6. You get 2 weeks to do it. Week 16, there's 2 chapters as well. That's just because week 17 I didn't want to introduce any new material. I wanted you to be able to focus on the test. So we took chapter 19 and moved it from week 17 back to week 16. That is the syllabus and schedule. I guess that will be all I cover out of the syllabus here. Let's flip back to the course shell and Blackboard. Announcements you're all pretty familiar with, I'm sure. Assignments is I have everything that you need for the week within each week. So anytime you click on a week, and I included the dates, it's all going to be the same format. If I'm off, it's just a clerical issue. Please let me know and I'll be happy to fix it as far as the format. But the format should be repetitive. Week 1 is going to give you a description of what you should do. Starts off with a description on top, and each time it's going to be about the same. You should read the chapter, flip through these things, your glossary, chapter outline, etc. That you need to do the discussion board and the quiz. This will be a link to the discussion board. Not necessarily that week specific, because then you wouldn't have any description, but you can obviously scroll down. So it'll have the link to the discussion board, and it will have the chapter 1. Those are all of your materials for the chapter. Of course, just read it, but then these things can assist you with the quiz and with understanding the material. And this is where you start to get into Connect, because this is hosted on McGraw-Hill's site. So it's a link directly to that PowerPoint presentation. And for the chapter outline, same thing. It'll be a link directly to that. And then your short quiz. The quiz is embedded within Blackboard, so it should flip through and right to your grade book. You'll know what your score is right away. You don't have to have any sort of interaction on it. You should be able to see the score right away. 15 questions. You get a full hour so that you can take the time to look up any answer you aren't sure about. And each week is that same structure within the assignment week folder. So that should be that repetitiveness. It should be beneficial, that trying to maintain that structure. Week 2, I'll just show another example of how that structure is repeated. This takes you to the discussion board, tells you what we're going to do for the week. Chapter 2 is all your materials, and ordered this way under the idea that after you've flipped through those, you'll get to the quiz. The math questions are associated for the first time in this week. If you click through, it'll take you to McGraw-Hill's site here. This first week is 3 questions, and you would just flip through the questions. Like I said, when we looked at the syllabus, you can multiple submissions. You get hints, you get all sorts of things. I'm not concerned with you memorizing a math formula and being able to test you on it. I just want you to understand the math associated with the chapter. So it's just a question or 2, and you get all the slack you want. I just want to make sure you understand it. So that 1, 2, or 3 questions should cover that basis. Oops, sorry. Each one of those weeks is that same format, so we're not going to go through all of them. You'll start seeing the same thing. Discussion board, we'll look at the discussion board that's due each week. We start off just with an icebreaker. I've got mine posted. Talk a little bit about why you're in the class, a little bit about yourself, what you want to do with your career. You can certainly put a picture in. I've put a couple pictures in. It's kind of helps with that interaction when you can put a face or voice with names. And then each week is the same sort of thing, where we want you to look at the chapter and then take a topic from that chapter and write a short 2 paragraphs. They say 200 words. That's just kind of ballparks 2 paragraphs as an example. This is about 200 words. And you use a source if you can find an applicable source, and make a couple notes on the topic that you found interesting. Each week is that same format, but I may a little bit in advance change a week, like if something interesting happens that's applicable to the topic that we have. So you'll want to actually look at the week to make sure that's applicable, and so that you don't start ahead of time and see that it's changed. I don't want that to happen to anyone where they've done a lot of the work already. I'll make sure that I'm only making a change like that and with a pretty good advance notice, and I'll put an announcement out. That's our discussion board. I have the applicable documents. I went ahead and put in each of the 2 assignments, the 2 short papers. The discussion board rubric. I'm going to grade your discussion board on a rubric basis, so you know exactly what I'm looking for and how it's going to be graded. So this describes what each one is, and then it should show my actual rubric. So when I go through, I'm going to be grading on these topics. So at 10 points, you know, the first initial post is going to be worth a good chunk of your 40% of the 10 points, and it'll either be 4 points, 3 points, and so on. Timeliness, making sure that first post is on time, your feedback's on time. Engagement is your peer replies. You have to have reasonable peer replies, not just I agree, good point, something like that. The things that I really like to see in peer replies that are easy to do are probing questions, because that continues a conversation forward. So when you read somebody's post, say, did you think about how this would affect that? You know, that shows that you read enough on the post that you could make a valuable question out of it, and it spurs conversation. And this is where some of the learning is supposed to occur, is in that discussion board, the conversations. So probing questions are big and they're easy. Writing mechanics, I don't expect anyone, I won't grade harshly on writing mechanics, but this is a 300 level course, so you should be writing at a collegiate level. That's the grading rubric for the discussion boards. The papers, I'll do a short little video on those separately, so I'm not going to go too much into them. Staff information, that's me. Course instructor, Andrew Sherwood. I'm very personable, so any sort of phone calls you want to make, I can take. I might do a couple conference calls if I think people have some interest in it, where I could review like an assignment or questions or something of that nature. And there's some background from me, my education, and feel free to link in if you'd like. A little bit about me. So I hope that this introduction to the class helped you out, helps you understand some things, setting good kind of what the expectations are. I know that I took some online classes where I really wish I would have had more interaction with the professor, so that's something I'm trying to do, hence this video. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions or concerns via email at the regular Peru State account, or if you're going to call, I'm not always able to answer, but if you're going to call, I'll answer if I can. Sometimes it works better if you shoot me an email first and say you'd like to chat, and then we'll set up a time that works best for both of us. And that's just so that I can have whatever I need to help you in front of me. I would hate for you to call and I'm out and about, or don't have the syllabus, or don't have computer access, whatever the case may be. So just shoot me a short email saying you want me to review something, and we'll make a time. I hope this all helped. I look forward to a great semester. It's my first semester at Peru State, and I'm really excited for it. I am an alum of the MSOM program, so I'm glad to be back. You guys have a good one.